Qui. Non c'è molto da nimmijo, non non c'è molto. Pa bir dargon son do shirmur do tomba to je jan la gi shom so, zero zering jan gan so, ja ko tu gi shen do ye la. Ji me ban zo zhao lao so ra de gong de to ban po re xin ji lo, gong de to ban po re xin ji lo, gong de to ban po re xin ji lo.
The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see it and hear it, I receive it and it uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. So let us continue with the Ksitigarbha Sutra. I've already read the Tibetan translation, so I don't have to read it again today. Let's begin the class on Chapter 5, the names of the various hells. When talking about hell realms, I think people over here probably have an easier time to accept it, to understand it, and accept it, including Tibetans as well as Han Chinese. It's easier for them to accept it. But for the Westerners or people from different countries, whenever we talk about hells, there are people who don't or who are unwilling to accept them. Of course, not all of them. Some of the senior practitioners, of course, it's easier for them to accept it, such as in Europe and North America. The students of Trungpa Rinpoche, Duke Khyentse Rinpoche, and so on, the disciples of them, they would believe the teaching on the hell realm. I think young people would have rather a much difficult time to accept the concept of a hell realm. In terms of for young people, I think it also is very much applicable to the Easterners, the Tibetans, the young Tibetan ethnics, if they were to grow up in large cities and whenever they hear the teachings on hell realm, they feel that is inconceivable and they don't accept it at all. And there are situations like such nowadays as well. The reasons of how Westerners don't accept hell realm, on one hand, it could be blind optimism, where they just simply don't want to accept the sufferings of hell realm. Whenever we talk about self-confidence and bravery and sincerity and the enjoyments of the heaven realm, and they would accept it very easily. So that's one aspect. And then there's another aspect of it. One aspect of the reasons. It is for about 2,000 years. There are some particular religions, in order to attain their agenda, to achieve their hidden agenda, they use the name of hell to blackmail others. Under this kind of spirit, they've done lots of things, such as working against government, as well as the civil citizens. There are religions where they talk about hell and heaven. Some of them don't. back at that time, indeed, lots of religious people achieved their hidden agenda with such kind of blackmailing others with the fear of hell realm. And because of that, nowadays there are people who are more senior, and when they talk about hell and religion and so on, they know in fact, they have a certain lingering feeling towards history. But the true religion, in fact, are different than the religion that used to rule our world. Lots of religious people would give teachings based on their dualistic thoughts. In the Bible, in fact, the mentioning of hell and heaven are rather quite vague. There is not much detailed teaching on the previous life and afterlife and so on. It only talks about if you were to create certain negative deeds, then you will go to hell, and if you were to practice virtuous deeds, you will then be reborn or go to heaven after death. So it's kind of similar to the Tantrayana teaching, where the snake is inside of the bamboo tube, and it has only two ways to go, either going up or going down. And other than that, there is no other way. So some of the teachings in other religions are similar to it. And for such a reason, when people listens or hears the term of hell, and then they would leave the audience right away. At the beginning, I feel that, well, I will give teaching on that because hell does exist, and this is the phenomena that appears based on sentient beings' karma. But whenever I give teaching in schools, I notice their official expressions and their attitude that is very doubtful, and they really don't accept it. And then later on, I started to understand why some composers said that why I shouldn't give teachings on hell, because it would be very difficult to make them accept such ideas. There's another reason, actually, that is the Western countries, under the influence of Darwinian thinking or the atheist thinking, so different schools, usually the public schools, do not allow others to give teachings on profound religious philosophy, including hell and heaven. And they do not welcome religious rituals either. You can only talk about the popular thinking. So when we look at the world right now, not a lot of people would accept, or not the majority of the Western schools would recognize religion, though they would claim that they have free speech and everyone is equal. So they talk about this. But whenever you put such kind of a philosophy of freedom and equality in a situation, it's not necessarily all free and equal. Of course, freedom is not to do or to say whatever you want. But in each country, I think they have their own value and their own method of maintaining certain freedom and certain sense of equanimity. Especially as politicians, they will be very careful about religion, because religion has such great magnetizing power that could really attract a lot of people. And in terms of religion and belief, it could attract more people's worship and admiration than any politicians or any kind of political party. So from the perspective of history, the whole world has been very careful about religion. For Buddhists or other religions, I think we can all believe it. We can all understand it. And then, because there were the incidents where the religious practitioners, after propagate their own philosophy, religious philosophy, and slowly, after gaining more power, they have enough power to then turn over the government and start a coup. There are situations like such. That is why, especially in the time of unification of politics and religion. But from the perspective of Buddhism, it's in fact very different. Buddhists won't gain, the genuine Buddhists won't wanting to rule a country so that they can attain personal hidden agendas, because this kind of selfishness is not fitting to Mahayana Buddhism. And that is why when people think of Buddhism also as a religion, and people would use religion to achieve certain things, I think it is because they have a very different view on religion, and that's very understandable from the perspective of history. Again, we've witnessed lots of war and conflicts for hundreds of years, and even lots of conflicts within the religious practitioners. So from this aspect, I think human beings are smart enough to use history to make speculations on what could happen in the future based on what had happened in the past experiences. And that is why the politicians and all the scholars and so on, they have this kind of speculation mentality. They found this kind of rules and so on. Anyhow, my point was on Hell Realm. I'm saying that I understand that if there are people who won't feel happy when I talk about Hell Realm, but even if you do want to leave, I'm not going to blackmail you saying that if you leave here or stop listening, you go to hell. I won't blackmail you like this at all, because I believe in the traditional culture or in the common belief in society or in the theory that's taught by Buddhism. I think the concept of hell is accepted by a lot of people. There are people, of course, who doubt if hell realm exists or not, and that kind of doubt is understandable, also very much allowed, because if you have big doubt, it will lead to big enlightenment or grand enlightenment. So you can use various ways to analyze your doubt, and then that could lead to grand enlightenment. There are people who would say that if hell does exist, why can't I see it? And then they would start to refute this idea of hell just simply because they can't see it. But this kind of thinking pattern is rather very inaccurate or inappropriate, because hell is not something that we, the human beings in human realm, can see through our eyes, flesh eyes, or eyes made of flesh. Because our eyes can only perceive very limited things. There are lots of things, lots of forms that actually exist around us, but we cannot see them, including light. The UV light, infrared lights, or the electric waves and so on, all of them actually do exist. And they do have a function in our daily life, but our eyes cannot see it. Also ghosts, spirits, rakshas and yakshas. not even just a hell realm. We cannot even perceive some of those beings in animal realm or beings in hungry ghost realm. In terms of the biology, in terms of the physics, there are matters and dark matters. The matters that we can see only partakes about 5% of everything around us. About 20 to 30% of the things around us are dark matters that cannot be seen, cannot be detected. And then there are about 70% of the things are energy. There are different calculations by different scientists, so the numbers may vary. But let's just simply contemplate upon this. How much can we really see in this universe? How much can we discover in this universe? How much can we see that appears and how much can we see that has a form? I think you should understand. I think you probably have a vague idea about it now. We talk about macro world and micro world. There are different ways of differentiating the two. And some scholars would consider whatever we can see by our eyes considered is as a macro world, and what we cannot see by our eyes are considered as a micro world, such as quarks that you can only see through microscope. And there are some there are some things that we cannot even analyze, such as the smallest particle that can no longer be dissected, such as on the tip of a needle. There are the smaller quarks can be arranged on the tip of a needle. So through this kind of analysis, we will understand that indeed the eye faculty can only perceive very limited things. And in this way, when we talk about if a hell realm exists or not, some people would say yes, it does, because that's how it's taught through the Buddhism Sutra. And some feels that, well, I'm agnostic. I cannot say that it doesn't exist, but I don't have reason to prove it. In fact, this is not really correct either, because according to the scientific way of understanding the world, or the scientific way of research, to exist or not exist, in fact, you all need the research and the numbers and the evidence and so forth. Therefore, until now, there is no numbers or research that shows that the hell realm does not exist. Dark matter, dark energy, those are the things that's slowly been discovered. And more scientists gained understanding of them. Whether hell realm exists or not, scientists don't really have their scientific way of proving it does exist or doesn't, because that is not their object of perception or perceived object. Unless the scientists made some negative karma and then fall into the hell realm, they can see it through their perception. Other than that, they really can't come up with other scientific evidence anymore. Don't even talk about hell realm, even the Preta realm or the hungry ghost realm, they cannot say if it exists or not. So here, according to Buddhist logic, where we would say that we refute the existence because we can perceive it, but it is not perceived, such as a vase or a pillar. But there is another refutation. Do you remember the term for it?
这叫什么？
Right, the term is that we refute the existence because we cannot, because it is not appearing in our perception, or we cannot perceive it, but we refute its existence only temporarily, because that refutation only refutes temporarily. You cannot completely refute the possibility of existence. For ghosts and spirits, they're not the object of our perception. When the Buddha was giving teaching, the ghosts and spirits also attend that teaching. All the other retinues cannot perceive them. And then the Buddha said that all the ghosts and spirits have to show yourself, otherwise you cannot attend my teaching. And then all the ghosts and spirits showed themselves. All the bhikshus were completely horrified. So if we cannot see it, does it mean that they do not exist? Not necessarily, because we cannot see it because they are not the object of our perception. They're not the object of your perception. But we have no reason to completely refute its existence. If you were to say that there is no energy field, no sound wave or electric wave in front of you, but that's not necessarily true, because all of those above are not the object of my perception. So this is how we should understand hell realm from the inference in Buddhist logic. Many people used to ask, saying that if hell realm exists, why can't I see it? This kind of question is rather very simplistic, and there are many things in this world that cannot be perceived by us, but we cannot refute its existence completely. We have to understand and accept it through the noble teaching. Well, so hell realm. I think let you be Westerners or Easterners, I think everyone should invest some time to learn about hell realm. Of course, it's not something that you can gain benefit simply by reading about it. If we do not implement that understanding into our daily actions, then we would create lots of karma, lots of negative karma, and would fall into hell realm, and that would be quite horrifying. So in our daily practice, in our daily life, we have to be very cautious about the karmic implications. And that is why we need to read more into the teachings on hell realm from sutras and shastras, such as the Right Mindfulness Sutra on the 13th chapter, where it extensively talks about the horrifying scenes in hell realm, and the Buddha Dhyana Samadhigaya Sutra, as well as Words of My Perfect Teacher, and commentary on finding comfort and ease in nature of mind, where it also extensively quoted from Right Mindfulness Sutra and letter to my disciples. Of course, there's no need for us to be terrified at all times. But it is very necessary for us to think twice when we create negative karma. We need to be scared and think twice when we create negative karma. The Bodhisattvas would fear to make negative cause, and the mundane beings would be terrified to receive or reap the negative reaction. Just like the wise ones in our world would fear fear to violate the law, and the foolish ones would frivolously create negative actions and violate the law, and probably be imprisoned. We can see there are all kinds of descriptions of all kinds of hell realm, just like there are all kinds of prisons in our world. In the 21st century, we can consider ourselves as more cultured than ever before, more civilized. But still, there are various ways of tortures in prisons. All prisons across the globe, all the way from Africa to Europe, there are different kinds of situations in different prisons. But if you were to visit those prisons, you would see how much sufferings there are in prisons. And then through that, we can understand how much, or we can feel fearful to the sufferings that exist in hell realm. You would probably have a new insight. So on one hand, we should accept the teachings on hell realm. On the other, I think it really helps us to be more careful when it comes to karmic implications of our own actions. Before the actual teaching today, I would like to tell a story about an image of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. So there's a story. In Liang Dynasty, in a monastery in Deyang County, and on the east corridor, on the wall, there were two paintings. One of them is Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's image, and the other is Avalokiteshvara's image. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's image was quite marvelous, because when people pay reverence to that image, the image would radiate light. At the beginning of Tang Dynasty, the Sangha members of that monastery would revere the unique painting, and then they would paint. They would copy and repaint. They would copy the painting or the image, and then they would gift their copied paintings to the donors or to the ones who have connections to such a painting. I think I've gifted all of you with paintings or tankas of Cherinzig, of Tara and Shakyamuni Buddha, as well as Protector Terma. Though they're copies, but the blessings are the same. So anyhow, at that time, people then received those copied paintings, and then they found that if they supplicate with great faith, their copied paintings would also radiate light. And after that news got spreaded, many people then started to copy and recopy that particular image. And then later, there was once an officer. He was he supplicated that image of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva with lots of faith. And once he had to travel for a long distance, and along with 10 ships, and he was on one of those 10 ships. All of a sudden, there was a ghastly wind, and all the other 9 ships sank. But the ship that he was on was safe and sound. So after he returned, he gained more faith to the power of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Later on, Empress Wu Zetian, and she heard about the painting of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and then that painting also radiated light. To the later days of Tang Dynasty, there was another emperor who, after seeing that copied image radiating light, then he revered with great faith. And then for that reason, the country was in prosperity and was very safe without any calamity. Another story related to this image was that a wife of a merchant, for some reason, for some unknown karma, she was pregnant for 28 months. And then after seeing the image of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva radiating, she started copying that image. And after she finished painting that image, she made great aspiration in front of it, and then she gave birth to a boy finally, and everyone was very happy to see him. So people usually call that particular image as the light radiating Bodhisattva. Therefore, I constantly think that an image all the way from the beginning of Tang Dynasty to the later days of Tang Dynasty, that painting kept such kind of great blessings. So let it be tanka or any other kinds of images, I think we can copy them if they have great blessings. Especially nowadays, we have such advancement in technology, then it must be much easier for us. Therefore, if we can propagate and if we can spread this kind of images, it would be really wonderful. Tang Dynasty is very prosperous for Buddhism. Throughout over 300 years of Tang Dynasty, there were 22 emperors, and only one of them was against of Buddhism. All the others had great faith in Buddhism and paid great reverence to Buddhism as well as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and that cannot be compared by any other dynasties. And for that reason, Tang Dynasty was very prosperous. From the perspective of history, we can also see that Tang Dynasty was definitely a golden era. Therefore, in a country, I think people's faith are very closely related to the fate of the country. People's faith are very closely related to the fate of the country, because if everyone in that country practice the correct dharma, practice virtuous deeds, then everyone would enjoy happiness. If everyone in that country practice evil deeds, do not care about the karmic implications, then everyone in that country would also experience immeasurable suffering. So let it be in a large country, in a small family, I think everyone has to create an atmosphere of kindness. Because if we were to create the cause of kindness, then there would definitely be the maturation of the fruition of kindness too. So let it be in an individual, a group, a country, the whole world. Everyone should practice virtue. Everyone should practice altruistic deeds so that the whole world would be happy and safe. If everyone in this world, all the way from the world leaders to the officials to the citizens to the beggars, if everyone's very selfish, only think about themselves and not caring about others, and practice only evil, then the karmic implications of evil fruitions would bring lots of suffering, definitely not happiness. I think we should understand this kind of karmic implications. Let's talk about the names of hell realm. At that time, the chapter 5, at that time, Samadabhadra Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, over here we see that Samadabhadra, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, as well as Manjushri Bodhisattva, all these Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas were present at that Dharma assembly. They're all in this Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's assembly, or the Ksitigarbha Sutra. So he said that a compassionate one for the sake of the 8 classes of supernatural beings, the 4 groups of Buddha's followers, monks, nuns, laymen, and lay women, and all the sentient beings of the present and future, which you would address the places which malicious beings sentient beings receive the fruits of their negative karma. In my translation, I specifically translated as Jambuvipa in Saha world, and especially Jambuvipa, all the beings, all the malicious beings. So, would you tell the names and names of these hells and types of suffering experiences there, so sentient beings of the future and the terminal Dharma era would know the karmic retributions for the malicious deeds. Could you please tell us about this, so that the future beings in the dark age would understand that virtuous karma, virtuous cause would lead to virtuous fruition, and evil cause would lead to evil fruition. So Samadabhadra Bodhisattva asked Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to talk about the karmic retributions. We, as human beings born in this human realm, were very lucky, because the majority of us don't even know about the existence of hell realm. And for those who do not know the existence of hell realm, they would practice lots of evil deeds without knowing. So luckily, we already understand that there is a hell realm, and we know the cause of falling into the hell realm. Then for people knowing this, then at least such kind of people would not easily or frivolously practice the kind of actions that would lead them to hell realm. That is why lots of the great masters in Tibetan Buddhism tradition, they talks a lot about the suffering in hell realm, because once people learn about hell realm, they will be very careful about their actions. So, if one were to know their previous life, then you can see your previous life in your present life's situation. And then Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva started replaying, saying, "Compassionate one, through the divine power of the Buddha and Samadabhadra Bodhisattva Mahasattva, I will briefly address the names of these hells and the karmic retributions experienced within them." So over here, do we need to differentiate it from the inherent wrong deeds or the wrong deeds that's stipulated by the Buddha? Well, maybe not necessarily. It was not too extensive over here, anyhow. So over here, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva started saying that a compassionate one to the east of Jambuvipa, there are these mountains called the Great Chakravarta, these mountains are so high and so deep that even the light from the sun and moon cannot pierce its depth. The hells are located deep inside these mountains. Of the great hells, there is one named Avicii and the one named Mahavici. Sometimes we would say this too as one.
梵文就是梵文是阿毗，就是阿是那个物的意思，见的话那就是毗啊，就是阿毗地狱，就是这有些呢就是说是无间。 它真的是
because is nil or Avicii means no gap. In the Ksitigarbha Sutra, where it says that in the Avicii hell, all the sounds you hear, the forms you see, they are all vicious. All the six senses are all vicious. So whenever the sentient being would fall into this hell realm, into Avicii hell realm, that's what they would perceive. Everything's vicious. According to Right Mindfulness Sutra, when it talks about Avicii hell, it says that the fire would flame up and the body would continue to burn. Every sentient being's body would continue to burn, and within such kind of burning process, they do not die. And so sometimes the Avicii hell or Mahavici hell are sometimes spoke together and sometimes spoke separately. I heard that USSR back in the 60s to the 90s, in order to retaliate the United States, they prepared two ways of waging war with them. One is space war, the other one is underground war. In terms of the underground war project, they took on this borehole project where they would dig really deep. One of the teams digged quite deep, and then some horrifying things happened. They heard lots of unusual and screaming sounds from that hole, which stopped this team from digging even further. To the public, they claimed that because they had to stop this project because they were lack funding. In fact, they found these. They found this place where lots of horrifying noise comes through. A geologist, a doctor at that time said that as a scientist, I would not recognize there's the existence of a hell realm, but now I think I myself have opened the gate to hell. There's a recording from that time, a recording of lots of screaming from hell realm. Sounds like crying and screaming from thousands of even millions of people. Also, lots of fire was, or fire or high temperature at that time was coming through the hole as well. So lots of extreme high temperature that cannot be detected by the equipment at the time. Some say the gate to hell realm is at Mount Kailash. But according to Mahayana's point of view, in fact, we would say that wherever people makes wherever people creates negative deeds, that's where the hell realm is. According to Bodhisattva Charavatara, it says that who made the fire in hell realm? In fact, it is the maturation of people's karma that leads them to hell realm. So from this aspect, not only just hell realm, all the 6 realms are the deluded perceptions. There are people, of course, who are not going to understand this, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Even people who study quantum physics, they would recognize this kind of teaching as well. So we can see that indeed whatever we see are no other than the deluded perception of our eye consciousness. According to Pramana, of course, it's a direct cognition. But if we were to dig deeper, even the Hinayana would reckon that the cup we see, it appears to be solid and existent, but from the Abhidharma or from the Sarvastivardhan or Sautrantika tradition or even scientific aspect, from the quantum physics aspect, we can see that these are all only appearing to be existent, but they're all empty inside. They're all empty in nature. But why our hands cannot go through? Because there's external force that is blocking us, and that's why our hand cannot go through computers. What does that mean? It means that what we see, it may seem to be real, but it is not truly existent. That is why in Samadhi Raja Sutra it says that our eyes, nose, ears cannot be considered as true cognition, as a valid cognition. So when we truly observe into it, we would recognize that what we thought we see as real is indeed not real at all. That is why in Buddhism we talk about everything's like a dream, like an illusion, like the flares of the sun, the reflection of the sun, and so on. Those kinds of metaphors are very similar to the studies or to the studies of quantum physics. Lots of the scientists' understanding are very similar to those of the Buddhist teachings. But when it comes to the more detailed understanding, I think the scientists still haven't reached there to the level of the Buddhist ending yet. If they were to stop their sole observation, but integrate with their personal practice and insights, then they may be then they may come to the same kind of understanding as Buddhism. Majority of the times, we have lots of doubts about the profound teachings on hell realm. But we need to also think about that what we think that's right may not be correct. What we think that's not correct may not be incorrect. So our dualistic mind cannot be trusted. In the sutra, it says our mind cannot be trusted. It is untrustworthy. Where is it from? Is it from the 42 chapter sutra? Or from the teaching bequeathed by the Buddha?
Yeah.
Can you take off your mask? Because I can't hear you mumble. 42.
Oh, 四十二章是吧？一教，四十二说一教经。
You two have different answers.
他说一教经。他大度。
Do you want to take a bet? You can't do bets, right?
哎呀，到阿毗达月去，然后下面就再讲是吧？还有时间，那就简单讲一下吧。
So that was
然后
one
有
of the
地狱
hell realm.
有这个
And
是一个
then
地狱，就是然后
another
还有
hell
地狱呢
realm,
就是叫做这个四角地
hell
狱啊。
realms
四角地狱的
named
话就是
four corners.
就降下很多的这个狱啊，就是这个狱里面呢
And
就有火的这个火焰的这个狱，还有呢就是用这个燃烧的
hell realm named flying daggers, fire arrows crushed between mountains. So over there in the corner, in the four corners, where it says that in that hell realm it would rain a lot, and some of them would rain fire, some of them would rain iron, and the sentient being's body would be crushed. Some would say that all the four walls would be all flared up, and the sentient beings would be captivated inside and cannot run away from there. There's also the flying daggers hell, where there's flying daggers and the burning fire iron wheels are like the snowflakes flying within the space back and forth and cutting sentient beings' bodies into innumerable pieces. Because the daggers are really sharp and it cuts sentient beings' body, mince their body into pieces. Also, fire arrows, where the arrows are on fire and would pierce into sentient beings' hearts, and the beings would die for thousands and millions of times. Also, the crushed between mountains hell, where because of the karma of sentient beings, there would be two great mountains between the two sides of them, and then on the two sides of them, and then crush them in the middle. And then later, the mountains would slowly part and then would crush the sentient beings again. So, experiencing such kind of suffering again and again. There's also the piercing spears. It's very sharp. So the body all the way from top to bottom and from left to right would be pierced innumerable times by the piercing spears. Kept on being spears. And then the hell realm named iron carts. According to the Sutra of Wise and Fool, there's a story of the daughter of Zhao. It is stated that there's an iron wheel twirling on top of the head and then tortured by iron carts, just as the carts that's been pulled by the horse and ox. Also, the iron racks or iron beds, where the sentient beings would be, the hell realm beings would be lying on top of those racks and cannot be liberated. The iron oxen. The ox is on fire, just as the fighting bulls in Spain. They would use their hoofs to kick the sentient being, the hell realm beings, or step onto the hell realm beings. And their eyes or nose and mouth would breathe fire. Whomsoever get close to them would be burned to death. And it's very horrifying. Think about the sizes of the hell realm ox and goats. They're much, much bigger. They're much bigger than the regular ox and goats that that we perceive in human realm. They're larger in many folds, so quite horrifying. For beings who used to butcher and kill the ox in human realm, then at that time the iron ox would appear. For those who kills dogs, then iron dogs would appear. For the ones who killed birds, then iron birds would appear and peck on the eyeball and so forth. So all of these kind of images are the reflections of people's different karmas, just like a mirror. For people who kill snake and ox and crabs and so forth, then you would later suffer in their forms. So you would receive the corresponding suffering, just as how you've created sufferings for them. And then the iron clothings, hell realm. Because the iron clothing's on fire, and once you put on that burning iron clothes, then the whole body would be burned rotten and be completely burned. That's lots of suffering because your whole body is covered by the iron clothing. And 1,000 swords, that's similar to the previous one as well. So your body is sliced and pierced by thousands of swords, by thousands of blades. And iron donkeys, which is similar to the iron oxen as well. It depends on what animals you used to kill in the other realms. So accordingly, then these kind of beings would torture you in hell realm. And then molten bronze, to pour the molten bronze into the mouth. That's the kind of suffering, as well as embracing pillars, the embracing burning pillars. In the ancient days, there's such kind of tortures to the prisoners. You have to embrace the burning pillars, and then your skin as well as organs would be burned, as well as flying lava rocks. Also, hell realm named plowing tongues. The tongue will be manifested as very, very expansive, and then there will be plows, plowing on the tongue, as well as chopping heads. So continuously to chop heads, chopping your heads off again and again. Dying this way is definitely quite a pity. Also, scorching feet, stepping on top of very burning feet, on a burning place where it would scorch your feet. Also, pecking eyes. All different kinds of birds would come and peck your eyes again and again. As well as different kinds of animals, such as vultures, eagles. For example, if you've killed chicken or killed goose, so all of those animals would be there and peck the eyes. And then the iron pellets. So it's actually iron balls that the hell realm beings would have to swallow them and would burn from the inside. There's another one, the angry corals hell. Some of the sutras didn't really explain this one very clearly, but there are the ones in the lonesome hell, there are some very different situations in those kind of hell realm. Some stated that in some places where the monastics would gather at different places, and when they eat, they are the utensils, but after they finish eating, they become the horrifying weapons and they would fight with each other. So quarrels with lots of anger, unlike arguments, unlike debates that we have nowadays, it's rather lots of arguments with anger. Sometimes in human world, we need to be aware of the arguments that we make. We need to be aware of the quarrels. We should try to avoid quarreling with others. Recently, I've been reading so much about the descriptions of hell realm, and I get very scared of myself. I try my very best not to have anger or have quarrels with others. I quarreled with the construction teams earlier. Earlier on, I think I practiced patience very well, but today I had to quarrel with them. I feel it was necessary for me to say something quite strict to them. Sometimes I say things, and I say things with lots of seriousness because I had to, and I have no anger in my mind. Sometimes maybe a little bit, but it's definitely a practice. We should try not to argue with others. We should try to practice patience. If you were to practice patience for even a little bit, and then maybe the anger would naturally dissipate and nothing would happen. Yesterday, I was giving a training session to the Tibetan Khmos, and then I asked them to make more recordings of their teachings. When I was giving them the training, I told them that they should be there in the meeting room at 11 o'clock sharp. But at 11 o'clock, there were still a few missing from the group. So I waited for 16 minutes, and still a few people missing, and I really felt a sense of anger. But after watching my own mind, I then abide in there, and I resolved the whole issue rather quite peacefully. I felt that this kind of way of handling it was rather successful. Because when people have strong emotions, if we can work with it with right mindfulness, it is definitely a practice as well. Sometimes, of course, we cannot be like Shakyamuni Buddha when his flesh was sliced into pieces, but still full of joy. We can barely, I don't think we can practice the same as Shakyamuni Buddha, but at least what we can do is try not to create negative deeds. This is indeed quite important. In terms of this angry quarrel realm, hell, I'm not quite sure about the details in this realm, but I think because this is in hell realm, it must be very horrifying. Maybe people over there would quarrel with great anger and would spend time in such a way, and definitely very pitiful as well. There's another hell named Iron Reapers. Just like in the ancient days, and there were lots of reapers, lots of those torment instruments that would cut off the hands and heads and slice them into pieces. So this is that kind of hell. And then another hell that is many hatred, lots of aggression. So when the sentient beings gather over there, their sense of aggression is extremely strong, just like they were about to explode. There are people nowadays who tend to be very kind normally, but whenever they have anger, they cannot work with such anger. So for such kind of people, if you do not confess in time, then this kind of cause would continue to develop, and that would be quite horrifying. In the many hatred hell, in fact, all the beings in there are constantly immersed in such anger, in such kind of hatred. We can look around in our world, the poisonous snake, even dinosaurs and the tigers, they must have great anger. They would not care for their body, and they would harm the others. So the sentient beings in hell are indeed really pitiful. According to Mahayana teaching, it says that the fault of generating 100 times of greed is not as great as the fault of generating even a moment of anger. Therefore, we really need to try to work with anger. Some people have lots of the habitual patterns from the previous karma, and they can barely work with their anger. But through practice, if you were to slowly change yourself, transform yourself, then that would be the fruition of your practice. So we should try our best to practice compassion and kindness. The teachings of Mahayana Buddhism is very precious to the sentient beings, because if we can change our mind stream, even listening to one class or read one book, it would transform ourselves very greatly. Today I heard that two local Tibetans stabbed each other 7 times. For these kind of people, in their mind, do they have a little bit of seed of Mahayana? Because think about it, if you don't want it, you do not want to give to the others. Maybe these two are not Buddhist, because as Buddhists would not do that at all. If they are Buddhists, that would be such a shame. We, as Buddhists, maybe we cannot create great benefits or great contribution to Buddhism, but at least we should not shame Buddhism. If we cannot benefit sentient beings, at least we should not harm sentient beings. This is our bottom line. So that's the very basic foundation of Mahayana. I myself am not a good practitioner, I think, but I think if I can keep this kind of faith, it would be very beneficial to myself and others. According In fact, the Mara would shoot out 5 arrows every day. That is greed, anger, ignorance, jealous, and arrogance. And in majority sentient beings, they would have lots of greed and anger. Also, jealousy also is that is one that's very common. Arrogance and ignorance are considered as less compared to the others. So we should definitely observe ourselves what kind of strong afflictions that we have in our mind stream. If we have strong jealousy, then we should supplicate to the 3 jewels. We should work on it ourselves, otherwise it may destroy our lifetime and even our future life. In this lifetime, as a lay practitioner or monastic, if we do not practice, if we do not guide our actions onto the virtuous path, then in the future life we may be reborn into the many hatred hell. And once you get in there, into the hell realm, it's very difficult to get out. Just as nowadays, if people get into prison, then sometimes it's very difficult to get out. Don't even talk about getting into the jurisdictional system. Maybe there are people who would get in there and it would be very difficult to get out. So similarly, I think we should try our best and not to be reborn into the hell realm, unless Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva comes to liberate us himself. We have really no hope to get out of hell realm. It seems that there's an infinite sentence in hell realm. So as Buddhist practitioners, if we don't believe in it, it's quite pitiful. We, as human beings, we should have faith. And for the ones who believe it, even with lots of faith, when the karma ripens, people can hardly control their afflictions when that happens. And then they completely let go and explode in such kind of affliction. And I've been to lots of jails, and I know that many of them, they only did what they did in 1 second of a time without the right mindfulness. And then Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva continued to say that compassionate one within the Chakravarta mountain, there are all these and other hells. The numbers of these hells are unlimited. Maybe we should stop here today. Let's chant the name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. On one side, we should supplicate Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to bless the ones who are in hell realm. On the other is that we need to supplicate Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to eliminate the pandemic and all kinds of sickness, all kinds of contagious illness and calamities. So let's chant the name and then dedicate merit.
Shang Zhu Sen Hua Jin Bo Sai Nyang Bo La Xiong Za Lon Chu Du Jia Sun Ji. Shang Zhu Sen Hua Jin Bo Sai Nyang Bo La Xiong Za Lon Chu Du Jia Sun Ji. Shang Zhu Sen Hua Jin Bo Sai Nyang Bo La Xiong Za Lon Chu Du Jia Sun Ji. 上周三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上周三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上周三花三花金赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上周三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上周三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上周三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金波赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。上这三花三花金赛云娘波拉香苍龙九度调僧。解我所能得一当觉日吧。他那尼贝扎那帕谢张杰嘎南吉拉弄出吧。从连着